All right, everybody. Good morning. It's good to see you here this morning. I'm Keith Mathis, if you're not familiar with who I am. And so this is our webinar that we do every month. This particular webinar is an interesting one, and I see several of you are asking for permission to video this. You're going to get a video from Kim of the entire presentation. She sends out video links right after we get done with this, as soon as it all gets processed. Okay, so you don't need to waste time or your memory or the company's memory on any of this stuff. Today's webinar is a difficult thing for us to look at because this is kind of a forecasting of what we're looking at with project management. We're talking about resilient projects and thriving in times of disruption, and whether your organization is there yet, or you're already in the middle of it, or you're on the back side of it. This is a difficult thing that happens. We've spent our whole life being trained how to run a project, trying to hold everybody to the agreements, the schedules, the time, the cost, and we spend all of our time really focused on those type of constraints. And now we've come to a place in our culture of the business world that, man, things are just changing so stinking fast that we are struggling with how do you adjust your projects as you go along. So I've got a lot more material in here than I think I'm going to be able to do. So there'll be some stuff that if you're wanting that particular piece, like at the end, I've got several theories that you might need if you're going through this in real life. I'm going to just highlight the theory very quickly. So if you want that theory, I've got it on here, but you'll just need to look at the video and stop it and write down. So I've got several theories that helps you in this building resilient projects, thriving in times of disruption. So what we're talking about here, let me kind of give you a working definition, okay? When we talk about times of disruption, there are things that happen in our organization, and there are things that happen in our culture and our society that shifts our organization. You've lived through some of these. 9/11 changed how we look at some things. And so if you had projects working with FAA or anything else like Dieter and his group does in Washington, D.C., then you do business differently, and everybody looks at it differently, and it has had a ripple effect. The other thing that has happened was COVID. And so when we went through COVID, our projects have turned out a little different. It caused a huge paradigm shift in a lot of areas. Some have come back in those areas, but then many of these have just changed. I mean, it's just different how we do things. Now we are experiencing something from the technological side, which is AI. If you're not involved in an AI project, you soon will be. In spite of what everybody is saying and people who are negative, we're not going to have a choice. It's like whether you're going to get the internet or not get the internet. You don't have a choice. So when I position this is what's happening. We're running our projects, but you're seeing a shifting in the business world. So let me get it going here for you. All right, so let me give you first off a definition of resilience in project management, because this is very important for you to be able to see this, okay? So project resilience is the capability of a project system to anticipate emerging threats, and opportunities, to absorb shocks without losing essential function, to adapt plans, structures, behaviors as conditions change, recover critical performance after disruption, learn and evolve from experience. This is a shifting, you want to call it a paradigm shift or whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. This is a shifting right in the middle of your project, things in your organization changing, things with the customer could be changing as well. So let's start with before the disruption occurs. So if the disruption hasn't happened yet, then you're working on your project like normal. Whether you're doing agile or whether you're doing traditional, doesn't matter. Traditional seems to struggle with this a little bit more, I think. I don't necessarily have research to back it up, but because of the constraints, and we've got hard and fast sign-offs and hard and fast change orders, I think just from the characteristics of traditional, it would do that. Resilient projects are designed with uncertainty in mind. So in the middle of the project, or you're running a project to fix things after that sweeping change has happened, you have a lot of uncertainty. You don't know, even after 9/11, with all the things that happened with all the people that were in power plants and different things, they were tightening up the security of all the power plants and everything. And so you hope nobody else is going to attack us here, but nevertheless, you're uncertain about some of those things. Clear priorities, contingency plans, decision rights, realistic buffers help teams respond quickly when conditions change. So this is more than a change order. That's not what I'm talking about, okay? I hope you understand that. I'm talking about things that might be way out of our control that are shifting your organization and shifting our country to do things differently than we've ever done. So there's a new disruption. So that new disruption that you have right now is technological. AI is exploding so much, and you can be on either side of AI, but it's going to happen. And so what we want to do is be as educated as we can. So the changing nature of project disruption, increasing frequency of economic, technological, geopolitical, environmental, or workforce disruptions. So we saw that as baby boomers left the organizations for retirement, because we have very few baby boomers still in the workplace today. As Gen Xers moved in, you saw a different philosophy, not bad, just different. And now you've got millennials that are in here with them, and so it's a different philosophy. Many things are much better because of those philosophies, and there's probably some history that walked out the door that an experience that we could use today. But the point is, the baby boomers are gone, and so that was one shift. COVID was another shift. And now technology is going to be that other shift with AI. Now, we've always had technology things, but AI is going to shift it. So interdependence among projects, suppliers, systems, stakeholders, regulatory environments, all these things are going to be up for grabs and change. Also, the difference between an isolated risk cascading compared to cascading system-wide disruption. So we're not talking about a hiccup in our project. We all deal with that. I'm talking to experienced project managers from all over the country and even from outside of the United States that gets on here. I'm talking about something that is outside of our control. COVID was outside of our control. AI is outside of your control, most likely, but you're going to have to deal with it with your organization. Why traditional project planning may be insufficient. So dependence on stable assumptions, fixed baselines, predictable conditions, limitations of static risk registers, periodic risk reviews, the danger of optimizing projects for efficiency without preserving adaptability. So what I'm trying to do is give you that structure of what you're seeing here. Some of these things that we have anchored down as a good project manager doing traditional projects is going to work against us, because it's not as simple as a change order. It's not as simple as that. It's going to be from the aspect of this change is happening so fast, we're having to pre-forecast where this project's going to go. We're having to forecast and anticipate where it's going to go, because it's changing our company. And so it's your change that's happening might be beyond what the project wanted change. It might influence the entire change of the company and how you do business. Now, there's categories of project disruption. So let me give you a few of these. Internal disruption, turnover, governance failure, scope instability, funding constraints, technological breakdowns. External disruptions could be supply chain interruptions, market volatility, regulatory change, cyber incidents, natural disasters. And then emerging disruptions would be artificial intelligence, technological obsolescence, misinformation, rapid shift in stakeholder expectations. All of these are the categories that's happening. Many of you are experiencing stuff from each of these categories. Some of you have multiple things. Now, some are stronger than others, but all of these are going to be influencing us. And so what we're looking at is within 12 to 18 months, if you have not tapped into some form of doing and using AI with your organization, with your business, you're going to be left behind. That's knowledge we're going to have. On Indeed right now, you see people looking and trying to hire project managers who have AI experience. And so what they're trying to do is fill that gap ahead of time. Eventually, you're going to see even more of this happening. So let's talk about some of the outcomes, not just the original plan. We have our bread and butter for our careers have been following the plan. And if we're working on the Agile side, delivering an iteration and a deliverable that goes to the customer and allows the customer to start experiencing and give us feedback. That has been our life. But what's going to happen when what we've typically done is not going to work into this, because the circumstances out here have changed. The customer wants value, and this is the value they want. Even before we're able to get it to them, the circumstances have changed, and now they need a totally different type of value. What's going to bring value to them is something they didn't even know when we started the project. That's what we're referring to. So during disruption, rigidity following the initial schedule can create more risk. Teams should preserve the project's core value while adapting scope, timelines, resources, or delivery methods. So it's not about Agile or traditional, and it's not about pro or con on AI. It's a matter of how are we going to be able to run things while all of these sweeping changes are happening. And the technology piece is going to be monstrous for us. The other side of this is going to be the early warning systems matter. And so how do we catch on to this before it happens? And that's why I decided to do this, even though We don't know everything that's going to happen. After the fact, that's a no-brainer. We can look back and say, oh, guess what? We look at COVID and we can analyze COVID and what impact it had on our projects and our companies as we went remote and all of those things. But how do you forecast it now here? So projects need simple ways of detecting emerging threats such as regular risk reviews, milestones, checks, stakeholder feedback, leading indicators. The earlier a problem can be identified, the more options the team has. Now, we all know that as experienced project managers. We know that we want to know earlier rather than later. We've always done that. But the flip piece of this is not just with our project. What's this going to do to our company? Could it make our company obsolete with some of the technology? And the answer is possibly could. Could it make our current project that we're working on, that we've invested on, that we've got locked in, that the stakeholders have all signed off on, be obsolete? The answer is yes, it really could. Now, a piece of this is going to be our communication. Obviously, strong communication builds the trust, the speed. And so what we're doing is we have to look at it a little differently. In other words, I can't just hold on to, well, you signed off on these requirements. And that's how we've typically done it. They signed off on the requirements. We're providing the requirements. And so that's the value you thought you have. In the middle of things, that's going to shift because what they thought was going to bring value doesn't bring value now. It's going to change everything. So in certain situations, stakeholders need timely, honest, consistent updates. Teams should clearly explain what has changed and what it means, what decisions are needed, what happens. So let me give you just a simple example, and this is a personal example. So if I've been with you and you've heard me speak, this is our 34th year. So we've been doing this a long time. I will tell you that when we started the company, my goal was to sell my company at some point. That was part of my retirement package. I'll tell you what's happened in the last 6 years. I can't sell it as part of my retirement package. You know why? Nobody can take my company over. You don't need it. You don't need 60 programs that I've written because you have AI. And so people who have AI can design their own programs. And so they're not going to pay for a company over here for 60 programs. Now, we actually engaged with a company out of Virginia many years ago, and they were wanting to lease our programs, and we pulled back from it and left it alone, saying we weren't ready to step into that point. But at this stage, when you start looking at it, you start realizing that when I decide to get done, we're basically going to close the company because nobody's going to want to purchase the training programs because they have other options out here, such as AI, that will probably give them something substantial that they can then edit and work on and get it to do what they want it to do. So that's a huge shift. And so my mindset has been different now. So I'm not trying to think of how can I transition this to somebody else. I'm thinking that nobody's going to want this. Nobody. This is not going to benefit anybody for the money that I was hoping I would get for retirement. It wasn't that I was really wanting to really retire 100%. I'm wanting to still do stuff. I just don't want to do it all, every day, week after week. So that's a huge shift in my mindset of how some of this is working. So now let's talk about resilient teams, how they learn and adapt continually. So after setbacks or major changes, teams should capture lessons learned, update processes, strengthen future plans. Resilience is not merely recovering from a disruption, it's emerging better prepared for the next challenge. So after 9/11, I think we're better prepared with security today. I bet you would agree with me on that overall, even though there might be areas we could still be even better. I bet that since COVID, we look at it, and you know what? I think we're better. All of our people have been trained in how to do remote work. Many of you are doing remote 100% of the time. Some of you are doing it 60-40, but we're different. We're better trained for those things. When we talk about resilience with our project, though, how can we recover that project? Do we think recovery if everything out here goes crazy on us that's out of our control? That's what you're looking for with this. So can your project survive changes to the plan? Now we say, well, this would be a change order. Yeah, a small piece of it could be, but you're looking at predictability, efficiency, stable resources, timely approvals, reliable suppliers. All of these things happen. And of course, as AI comes in, what happens if you lose that reliable supplier? The supplier is no longer in business and you've got a 7-year contract with that supplier. Now things are changing because you're having to look for somebody different. Or what if you start looking at stable resources? Your people are moving back and forth. Typically, it's 4 years when a person will change jobs. 4 years, 3 months has been the statistic like crazy. However, this week in class, one of the ladies said in our agency, it's 2 years. And I just thought, wow, in 2 years, you just haven't even got them going very well. Also, actual project environments could include supply chain instability, labor shortages, cyber incidents, budget volatility, regulatory shifts, climate and geopolitical events. We don't know what all these external things are. We see the markets going crazy. We see jobs. We want people to work, and then we don't want people to work. And so right now we have the lowest unemployment since 1969. And that's just a shocker when you see the stock market bouncing all over the place. I mean, so we're in uncharted waters with so many of these things. So a detailed plan is not necessarily a resilient plan. We've always had some detailed plans in traditional, but a resilient plan is how can we recover when that unexpected, not just a normal risk, but that unexpected thing hits our company, hits our culture, hits our economy, and changes the dynamics. So let's go into performing under uncertainty. So resilience is the capacity to perform under uncertainty. Project resilience is the ability to anticipate disruption, absorb initial impact, adapt plans and resources, recover critical performance, learn and improve. Resilient projects do not avoid every problem. They preserve intended value when conditions change. So right after 9/11, I was doing training for Pennsylvania Power and Light, and I was at one of their power plants. So I was talking to them about, okay, so let's assume your power plant gets hit. Can you rebuild this power plant and get it generating electricity? And he said, we actually have played those scenarios out since 9/11. And he said, we do. We can have our power plant up and going within 40 to 45 days generating power. Now think about what that meant, what that said. That was such a powerful statement. And whoever led in that direction, what a great visionary for that, because they're saying, if it does happen, and we know it's a risk, but if it did happen, their recovery capability in the face of this uncertainty is 40 to 45 days. What a powerful piece of knowledge for those people to know, is that they could do this. Now, let me bring you into the resilience cycle. This is one of the published resilience cycles that's out. So it gives you 6 steps. We're going to do a deep dive into each of these for a moment here. And so what they talk about is anticipate. And this is where we're so locked into a plan that sometimes we're missing all the stuff that's happening around us. So anticipate. Buffer. In other words, what kind of buffers do we put into place? We typically call them contingencies, is very common for us. Stress tested. Did we do the what if scenarios? And so we're going to do a deep dive in every one of these. And number 4, escalate. When do we escalate? What is the trigger that causes us that, even though everything might be okay on our project, we're bringing management in to take a look at some of these things because we see the triggers out here that maybe it hadn't hurt our project yet, but we see them happening. And then recovery. Do we have the capability to recover, to get our project back on track, or to get our organization even back on track? And then what did we learn from this? So let's do a deep dive into each of these. Now, I'm not going to go through every piece of this, but I set these up to where we have anticipate, and then what to do, why it matters, and how it applies. And I've done that on all 6 of these. And so what I want to focus on, though, is just the intro into these, because if you're interested in these, then when you see the video, you can stop the video on each of these, okay? So let's look at the first one, anticipate. See around the corner. You're anticipating what could be happening around the corner of business. It's not something you already know. We'd love it to be like that, but it's not. Proactively scanning the environment to identify threats, opportunities, uncertainties before they impact the project. It's where you're pre-thinking what could go wrong. And this is where AI shines. And so those of you who are using AI already as an assistant, you're already seeing this, because AI is that predictive model. And so with AI being that predictive model, it's allowing you to, it's giving you some ideas of what could possibly be happening. So the first one's anticipate. The second one is the buffer. You build capacity before disruption. The buffer is about building reserves, flexibility, backup capacity, and protective slack to the project, and that the project can absorb shocks without losing momentum. Now, the problem with this is that's additional money that we're putting into our budget. And the problem with this is we're shooting in the dark sometimes. We don't know what could be going wrong. We don't know necessarily what's happening. So we've done the same thing here: what to do, why it matters, and how to apply it. Third one's called a stress test. Pressure the plan before reality does. So you are thinking through what could go wrong here. Everything's fine now, possibly, but what could go wrong in this? So stress testing examines how the project performs under pressure. Teams intentionally challenge plans, assumptions, dependencies, and response capabilities and to reveal weak points before disruption occurs. So it's not just a situation where we have risk. We are actually challenging it. What else could go wrong here? Because you've got the potential of terrorism, you've got the potential of bad economy, we got the potential of technology. Any of these things could be taking us down a different road than we know right now. So stress test. The fourth is going to be escalate, raising the signal before the issue grows. Now, this is a difficult one because it hasn't happened yet. Once it happens, it's a whole different deal. So escalation means surfacing issues, risk, decision needs at the right time and to the right level. Resilient project teams do not let serious problems linger unresolved. And I don't expect that from any of you because you're great project managers. You're going to work on this. But the point is, when do we escalate and when is it just our project? And so most of these things we're talking about are going to be outside of the project, influencing it typically from the outside in, and we're having to deal with it before we can finish it. Number 5 is recover. How do you restore stability after the disruption? Recovery focuses on regaining control, reestablishing performance, learning from disruption after the immediate response. So let's chase a rabbit for a moment. So go back to COVID. If you looked at COVID and COVID happened now, there'd be a lot of things that we have learned from COVID by going through it in how we would set our workers up today. Whether you believe all the stuff about COVID or don't, doesn't matter. The point was COVID had a powerful impact on our businesses and shut a lot of businesses down, and some businesses didn't recover. That's absolutely true. But the point is you would handle it differently based on the knowledge that we have from an epidemic that we've never experienced and haven't had and basically had not had till the Spanish flu. So we've learned something from it. Don't want to go through it again. Hope it never happens again. But we would do it differently probably than we did this past time because we've learned more. You know more about it. And then the last one is, what did you learn specifically? Turning experience into stronger future performance. Now, we've all done this. We all learn. And so if you've ever gotten up on a ladder cutting a tree limb down and the tree limb swings down after you cut it off and knocks the ladder out from under you, you learn, don't you? You fell off of that stinking ladder and you're thinking, okay, so I've learned one thing. I need to be more concerned on where that limb is going to fall and where it's going to swing because it's going to knock my ladder out from under me. Learning is a big piece of this. And can we continue to learn? The answer is yes. So learning focuses on capturing insight after action, disruption, recovery, or major milestones. And so you're looking at what have we learned that's going to help us make better decisions in the future, because you're right in the heart of it all. All right, let's move into why traditional risk management is not going to be enough. Risk, interact, cascade, and evolve. And so when we look at risk, we typically are looking at risk associated with the scope of work we're doing. Whether you're doing agile or traditional, it doesn't matter. We're constantly looking at those risks. This takes another step beyond what the current risks are that you're looking at. Resilience asks a broader question. How will the entire project system behave when several risks interact, when a lot of these things happen? And it just changes the whole dynamic, because what we anticipate is this risk will happen, and then later possibly this risk will happen, and then we move back to it. Here, we're looking at multiple things that are happening simultaneously. Now, it could be somebody trying to attack our company, trying to hurt our organization, or any of those things, of course. But how can we respond during those situations? So an example of this would be supplier delays. So schedule compression, overtime, team fatigue, quality defects, rework, budget overruns, loss of stakeholder trust. A lot of things can happen when just from a supplier delay. We've given our word that something's going to be done or completed or turned into somebody, and then we see that, you know what, it's not going to happen. We lost our supplier, now we've got to bid it out again. So disruption is a system level problem, not an isolated incident or event for a project. It's going to be bigger than what is just your project. So 3 capacities of resilience. So we're talking about absorb, adapt, and transform. So let's take a look at these a little further. So absorptive capacity without disruption is disruption without severe performance loss. We're able to absorb those things happening. And many of you do this every day. Something happens, and before you know it, you and your team have worked this thing out and got it back on track. And so that's your life, okay? Examples could be based on contingency funds. We did contingency schedule buffers that we've put in because you put extra time into the timeline, backup suppliers, you brought in another supplier, or you brought in additional resources of people, and then reserve staffing. You maybe borrowed staffing for someone else because the project was a high priority and you wanted to make sure that that you got it taken care of. So we do it a lot of times, but we absorb it. This is the world we live in. This one's not the one that bothers us most of the time because we do with this. The other is adaptive. Adaptive capacity, change plans, roles, and sources intelligently. COVID, if we go back to that, you were faced off with this because COVID shut down a lot of your projects. It changed how they were functioning, and it changed the timelines. So you had no choice but to do that. So you had flexible scheduling, cross-trained staff, scenario planning, decentralized decisions. A lot of things went into it. But the long and short of it is when you came back, you and management and your teams basically kind of reshuffled what are we doing on the project, and let's get them in the right priority. And then we start getting them out the door, even though we're running late on most of our projects because of what's happening, we're starting to get them out the door. So you would reevaluate what the proper priority would be. The last one's going to be transformative capacity. Transformative capacity uses disruption to redesign the project system. This is going to be your technology piece that we've been referring to. Might be other things too, but technology. Because as AI comes in, the way we do business today is not how you're going to do business in 18 months, in 3 years, in 5 years. If anybody had told you that there would come a time before internet that you were going to have email system that you could send people messages and hear back from them in a matter of moments across the world, we would laugh and think that was silly. And yet internet came in, and to not have internet today would just be looked at as a secondary type of company. What do you mean you don't have a website? What do you mean you don't have internet? You're going to see that same level happen with AI. AI is part of the anchor of business for the future. So your move might be moving from one supplier to multiple suppliers, modularizing delivery, revising governance, strengthening future controls, a lot of different things we're going to be looking at. And absolutely, we should be putting in guidelines for anticipating what's going to happen as AI comes in. Now, I want to show you this model. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But one of the models that's out there for a resilience model is called the DARE project. And so you detect, absorb, respond, and evolve. And so by detect, you identify weak signals before disruption escalates. So in other words, you're anticipating what are we seeing out here before it's hurt us. Absorb, you use intentional financial schedule, resources, and supplier buffers. So we're doing it internally. We're absorbing that to keep our project from being hurt. And the response, you're making rapid decisions through predefined authority and escalation. This is where it's going to be different. On traditional, you're not going to have tons of time to make some of the decisions you're needing to make. That authority level needs to really be pushed down to that project level rather than trying to escalate everything. So this is going to take some time and trust building and equipping some people in order to have people comfortable for you to make the decision. And then last would be evolve. You capture lessons learned and improve future recovery capabilities. One of the big things that came out of this as I was studying for this and getting this ready for you over the last couple of months was that piece of evolving and that piece of lessons learned. We typically have talked about lessons learned at the end of the project or at the end of a phase. On Agile, we typically have talked about it at the end of a retrospective. The truth is, you've had some kind of crisis happen. That's a good time to have a lessons learned. It doesn't matter that you're not at the end of the phase. It doesn't matter that you're not at the end of the project. What can we learn from what we just went through? And that's what you're trying to do, is build on that so that you'll do things differently in the future. And so this is a graphic for DARE that goes right along with what we were talking about. So one of the pieces that you're wanting to look at too is going to be before the crisis, deciding who can act. So you've made some decisions and given some responsibilities and authority to people, so you're not running around when something happens to figure it out. So I gave you 4 levels here. And so level 1 would be very minor delay, maybe under 5 business days. And so decision authority could be the work stream lead, or somebody on the team could be making a lot of those decisions. Required response would be make local adjustments. Level 2 would be delay is threatening a milestone. So you're talking about something much more substantial. Decision authority might be the project manager or project sponsor. Replan and notify the sponsor. In other words, you're, once again, transparency and clarity. Level 3 is going to be impact exceeds contingency threshold. We had 4 days built for this. This thing's going to take 14 days. Okay, so now you're bringing in the sponsor and steering committee. Why? Because it's substantial. It could hurt other projects and other resources that are on my project now that need to go someplace else. So you're looking for approved reserves. You're using the scope or schedule changes to be able to do that. And then level 4 is strategic. Strategic objective is at risk. And so you're going to be looking at an executive governance board for something like this, and you're making portfolio level decisions. Why? It's strategic. And so that means that's not just hurting my project. It's not just hurting our program. It's hurting our organization because this is so significant. And it's going to be very powerful for something like that. Okay, so dimensions of resilience measurement. So you have anticipation capacity, capability. Do we have the capability to anticipate what is happening or what could happen to our project? More than a risk assessment. We're anticipating, we're foreshadowing it out here. We're looking at it from a pre-event is what we're doing. And this is where the technology helps us. What could possibly go wrong with this? And technology can actually give us some suggestions here. So you measure the project's ability to identify emerging threats, changing conditions, potential opportunities before they significantly affect project performance. What could go wrong here? What if this goes in? So what if AI really does take over? You think it doesn't. So rather than stay dormant and not do something, what if it comes to your organization and takes over a lot of the programming? What if it comes in and takes over a lot of the different components that you currently are doing manually right now as a person? What we're really wanting to build into these situations is letting the technology do it, but we verify it. Do it, but we verify. You always have the human in the loop, which is what we should be doing. And then the other would be absorptive capacity, measures the project's ability to withstand disruption while maintaining its most critical operations, deliverables, and stakeholder commitments. So when you have that heavy hiccup in that project, how long can you withstand in trying to be able to handle all of this? And so a good example of this personally is that most people are told by all your experts that we should have 3 to 6 months of reserve in the bank in case something happens to our job or something happens to us where we get sick. And so what happens is that's really fitting this piece here of absorptive capacity. Why? I can pay my bills for 6 months because I've got 6 months worth of money in the bank. Now, the problem is month 7, okay, because that's beyond where we are, okay? So now we're not able to absorb it anymore, so it's going to be a bigger deal. Also, you got adaptation speed, measures how quickly the project team can revise its plans, resources, priorities, working methods in response to changing conditions. You saw this after COVID. You see it now with AI. You're having to take all the plans that you have had, and maybe you have 3, 5, and 10-year strategic plans, and you're having to look at it through a new lens. Technology has exploded. And so can that technology take some of the work off of our people and maybe keep us from having to hire more people, or allow us to be more efficient in what we've already done, even though we've got human in the loop, be more efficient in that? And then recovery time measures how long it takes the project to restore essential functions and return to an acceptable level of performance following the disruption. Something happens and it knocks our socks off at our organization. How long will it take for us to be able to get everything working again? Those are discussions that the power plants fortunately have had, and those are discussions that we probably need to think about, because can I recover? How long will it take for me to recover to get some of this going? So I'll give you an example of something I thought that was really sad. Many years ago, when we first started training people with the PMP, we were using a particular book, and the author, I actually talked to him on the phone, and he was out of New Orleans. And nice guy. He had written a book on passing the PMP. This is before PMI started writing their own curriculum for this. So I used the book. I loved the book. Well, Katrina hit his home in New Orleans. And not only did he lose his home, guess what he did? His book was on his server that he lost. And so his book never came back out in print. That was it. Never came back out in print. So he not only lost his home, he lost his book that was selling really well as a preparation book for the PMP. And I never have forgotten about that. And he was just saying, I've got to start that thing all over again. And that was what it was just such a huge endeavor for him to do that. So he never recovered on that piece with his book. All right. And then you have learning effectiveness. How can we learn from this? Measures how successfully the project converts disruption, experiences, successes, and failures into improvements that strengthen future performance. So whether you like AI or not, AI, as I said, is going to be here. So how can I use AI in a beneficial way for our company? How can I use it beneficially for myself? I know you're dabbling in AI, even though you're not telling anybody. I mean, I know you are, because it's too fascinating for us to do this. And so we are doing this. But what we're wanting to do is you're looking to see what can I learn that's going to benefit us down the road? What can I learn that's going to make me a better project manager, a more educated person, because the education is coming through AI like crazy to feed us things we don't know. And so how can I learn from these types of things? And then the escalation protocol for a project is escalation protocol for a resilient project is a predetermined process for identifying, reporting, assessing, elevating threats that exceed the project team's authority, capacity, risk tolerance, or response capability. Its purpose is to ensure that the emerging disruptions are addressed quickly by the appropriate decision maker before they cause significant harm to the project objectives, operations, stakeholders, or organizational continuity. And so what you're trying desperately to do is just that. This is going to hurt our company, then we can escalate it. And we've got management and the project team all on the same side, maybe even in the same room working on these things. So I gave you just a real example here. You might need more escalation levels than this. And so level one would be maybe the project team like we referred to a moment ago. Level two maybe is the program or functional leadership. And then obviously level three for this one is executive or crisis leadership. You might have more levels in your escalation path, but this is spelled out. When something's happening and it's having sweeping change and it's changing so fast, then it's going to change the culture of your organization, and it's changing what caliber employee you need. You need people with different skills. You need people who are trained. So upskilling is going to be a big deal for all of us on these things. Every escalation protocol should define both the trigger, the owner, the decision deadline, communication channel, documentation requirement, budget authority, replanning authority. So there's a lot more authority that's being pressed down to the team rather than going through always having to go through the chain of command for everything. Chain of command is always slows things down. So we have to watch that area. Also, the protocol should define the conditions that require escalation. Is it a critical milestone? Is it cost and schedule variance? Is it a risk? Is it disruption that threatens safety, compliance, security? We would escalate those 99% of the time for sure, because that's so big. The response requires authority beyond the project manager's delegated limits, and multiple work streams or stakeholders are affected. So it's not just my project, but it's hurting your project and somebody else's project. So we want everybody on board with this particular thing. Now, what I've done here, I'm not going to go through all of these. I wanted to give you some theories that you might find yourself when you're in the middle of this, having to go back and look and see some of the models and some of the theories. So I've listed several of these. I'm going to name the theory. I'm going to name the theorists so that you've got these. This is going to be part of your video too. But each of these theories could be used for a little different situation as you start evolving into this. And so I want you to have this resource, even though I know it's making my video run just a little bit longer. So the first one is organizational slack theory. You've got Cyert and March are the two authors of this. And so what you're looking at with this, they're looking at organizational slack within a behavioral theory of a firm. And so they're giving you some of the models that they use with some of this. The next is resource dependence theory. This is Pfeiffer. Many of you maybe have been exposed to Pfeiffer. This theory, he's written a lot on leadership and teaming. And then the other would be Slonikic is the other author that's working with him. The third is organizational information processing theory. Gabreth happens to be the one here. And his core theory is that we must increase information processing capacity or uncertainty increases. And that's one of the things why AI is going to be so significant. Guess what it does? It increases the processing capabilities. It will process an enormous amount of information and give you analysis on that information in a matter of seconds. And so that's going to be very beneficial. Now, the problem is right now that we don't trust it, and we shouldn't trust it. That's why you have a human in the loop. But it does do those types of things. Third is called sense-making theory. And this is Wick. And so the primary theorist associated with organizational sense-making, what he's looking at is how do we make sense of what's happening? Can we allow the people internally to understand what's happening? And really, it's almost a push on buy-in. And then you're looking at conservation of resources theory. This is Hopful. And then you're looking at psychological safety and team learning theory, which has really gotten a lot of play today for that safe environment to where I can sit at a table if I'm an employee and I can share what I'm sensing. Even though I don't have evidence, I can share this in our team. It's a very safe environment for us to be able to talk about some of those things and anticipate what's happening because I don't have proof yet. Proof is going to happen after it happens. So psychological safety and team learning theory is one of those. And then the next one is called bounded rationality theory. This is Simon. And so this is another theory that fits into there. And he has in this particular case, they're looking at once again limited information. Limited information causes people to miss stuff. So are we allowing people to be able to have as much information as they possibly can have? And then the other is naturalistic decision making. Several authors involved in this. But the point is, this is looked at as decision making emerges from a research community studying expert decisions in real world, high pressure settings. They're looking at, can they come up with conclusions studying high pressure situations? Many of you are in some of these situations. And then the next one, organizational ambidextrous theory. In this case, Duncan introduces this concept, and so he's really the driver in this, but these other researchers participated with it. And so it allows you an opportunity when you're looking to see how is this going to impact the strategic and the organizational network and framework of what we're doing. Do we need to redesign our organization to something different? All right, let's go into our next little piece here. So adaptability. There's several sample statements that you might be hearing, or you might say. So adaptability, our team can quickly adjust priorities when conditions change. That's an adaptability type statement. Stress tolerance, our team maintains effective communication during high pressure periods. A recovery speed, after disruption, our team can return to productive work quickly. And then role flexibility, team members can temporarily cover responsibilities outside their usual roles. And next is decision confidence. We know who has authority to make urgent decisions. And then psychological safety. Team members feel safe raising concerns early. So I want you to hear some of the statements here. The one thing that you're going to have more than this is anytime you're talking about like recovery speed. After disruption, our team can return to productive work quickly. We would want metrics. I would want metrics there, and I know you would too. How quickly? Because that would be my next question. What are we talking about? And of course, it's going to be different depending on what they're looking at. All right, so let me bring this to a close here and show you some last minute things here. The first off, let me talk a little bit about webinars. So this is our listing of webinars for the last of the year. And so September, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity and projects, protecting your data, your teams, your reputation. October, we're going to talk about Beyond Millennials, leading multi-generational project teams for impact. And this is an exciting time. For those of you who are supervising, millennials, you're talking about a generation of people who've never been without technology. They are not fearful of it. They don't sweat it at all. It is part of their DNA. And then in November, we're talking about leading those hybrid teams. And so aligning, adapting, and delivering results with a hybrid teams that we're working with. And then December, we're going to close it out for the year, leading strategic risk, preparing today for tomorrow's disruption. For those of you who have people who are trying to get in to do the PMP, we have one more mastermind that will help them fill out their application and give them an idea on what the PMP is all about. And so this is a free PMP mastermind. We run it for 5 days. It takes about 30 or 40 minutes per day for each of those 5 days. We also give a free scholarship for somebody who's attending this. For them to attend a boot camp on us. And so we give one of those away for each of our mastermind, and this will be our last one for the year. And so this is a great way. We do a couple of Zoom calls so they can ask any question and kind of just, get the behind the scenes. And if you have your PMP, you know what I'm talking about. Some of it's kind of gray. You kind of find it out when you get in the middle of it. And so we're trying to alleviate that with the PMP. And then I wanted to give you a couple of things here. For those of you who are looking for additional project management training, these pricings here are per class. And so you can put 20, 25 people into a class if it's a 1 day or 2 day or 3 day class, and this will give you an opportunity to be able to have us do this. We can do it virtually, or if you're going to do it on site, you just pick up the travel in addition to this, and we'd be able to do it. And this is our pricing structure for your PMPs. And so if you'll look down here for group rate, if you have, private group rate, if you have 10 people or more, we'll do a private class for you of PMPs. That includes the guarantee. And so you'll pay for their first test. We'll pay for their second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth tests. And nobody in the world will touch that guarantee. So if you're looking to do the PMPs, we'd love to be able to work with you. So we do it through virtually, or we can do it on site as well. And then our next PMP, we have 2 more PMP boot camps. We've got one starting on Monday, but we do have 2 more that we'll have this year. They'll be virtual. I'll be leading both of these virtual PMPs. So October and in December, we'll be doing those and closing out the year. PMI has already changed their test in July, and so we've got new material for everybody. And so we'll see. This will be the first one I've run with the new material. So we'll be working through all of that with all of this. And then if I can help you in any way, you've got my 800 number, you've got our website and my email address. I'd love to be able to help you any way I possibly can. I appreciate so much that you come and you listen to the webinars each month. I hope they've been beneficial. And of course, it's loading up your PDUs. I know that, and I'm glad it does, because we got to stay current. And so hopefully this has been something to stretch you a little bit, cause you to think a little bit. And I appreciate you being here and listening to all of this. Okay. God bless you. And I will see you guys next month. Okay. Bye, everybody. See ya.
Have a good one, sir.
Thank you.